a very interactive class, more like a discussion on the issues. You can stop me anytime if you have a question. I'd like. Alright, so here's the plan. This is, liberalism is a topic where you can have a complete course for 3 months, and I have only 40 minutes. So it's a, daunting task to have, even talk about this idea and relate it to development. But I just, tried my best. So I'm gonna just give you some basic ideas of what we mean by liberalism, what most of the people think about liberalism, and then I'll just talk about very briefly some of the philosophers who, kind of influenced the idea of liberalism. And then I'll give you some examples of the differences between political, economic, and other type of liberalism. So political liberalism, for example, is very different from economic liberalism. So you have heard, I'm sure you know, in the States there are two big parties, right? Democratic Party and Republicans. Which one is more liberal? No one can answer this question, because some of the Republican policies look very liberal, some of the Democratic policies also look very liberal. So it's hard to just distinguish that, okay, this party is more liberal than that. All right, and then I'll bring in, economic development. I teach development, so that's kind of, my area. And then I'll talk about some of these, liberal explanations behind development and growth, like Rosto's growth theory. And then I'll also talk about dependency theory, some of the, things which economists boast about. And then finally, I'll talk about neoliberalism, which has been the, latest token, I would say, in this, ideology, or whatever you want to call it. I really don't know what's the right word for liberalism. It's just maybe concept. That's kind of a me also. And finally, I'll just I'll give you some, an indication of where liberalism may not work and how to cure these things. And I'll ask for your opinions. Okay, so before I start, we don't have time perhaps to have a formal introduction, although I introduced myself. Why don't I start with this question? Do you think, are you liberal? Or do you really follow the liberal principle? Whatever you think of liberalism. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you the same question. Because who knows, maybe after we have this 1 hour, 1.5 hour discussion, maybe you change your mind. And then maybe you'll say, no, I'm no more a liberal person. So let me just ask from that corner. Just tell me whether you think you are liberal or not. And that could be anything. You really don't need to justify or explain your position. Just if I ask you, are you liberal? Or do you think you follow liberal policies or liberalism in heart? What would be your answer? Yeah. According to the religious? I see. So you are liberal within the context of, let's say, economic policy or political ideology and all those things. So you are liberal. Okay, let's stick to that. All right? Maybe? Okay, let's say yes. Okay, 1 to 10 liberal scale. Let me, ease your life. So 1 to 10 liberal scale. How much score you wanna give? Let's say you have a, score scale of 1 to 10. 10 is the most liberal. 1 is the least. How much score you wanna give yourself? 7. Okay. 5. All right.
Politically liberal, but economically, possibly social.
Okay, just give me a final answer, because we're going to talk about those things. And that's why I don't want you to justify your rank. We'll talk and then
6.
6. 9. Okay. 6. 9. All right. 2. 8. 7. 7. Right. Are they? Part of the class or no?
Your stuff?
Yes.
Oh, the staff, okay. All right.
7.
7?
7.
7.
Looks like there's equilibrium. 7? Yogi?
10.
10?
10.
Oh,
10.
10? 5? 7?
7.
I have no idea how to write.
No, just say, I mean, close your eyes.
Mostly socialist.
Huh?
Mostly socialist.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay, I'll divide by
5.
5,
5?
9,
9?
6.
6? And you?
Politically, socially, an 8. Economically,
Just one. Let's
Okay,
say
fair enough. 8.
8. You guys?
3.
3.
5.
3 and 5. All right. We have 1. Anybody said 1? All right. I'm saying 1. Just to make it interesting. So we have 1 to take. Right? A good distribution. All right. Okay. Remember what we said, because again we'll do another round of this. I would like to know whether the discussion we're going to have really influences you, or even kind of makes you think that perhaps you chose a wrong Okay. Right. Okay. Let's move on. So what is liberalism? There are many definitions. If you Google, I mean, you will find zillion articles, thoughts, opinions on this. But in a nutshell, maybe we can say that if you believe in rationality, again, rationality, what is rationality? Economists, the way we think of rationality is very different. We have certain definitions of rationality. So, for example, we believe market is the best way to exchange ideas, exchange goods. We always think that people should make a decision at the margin. So this marginal concept is rational to economics. But it may not be the case for social scientists, sociologists. For anthropologists, rational means maybe doing a survey in a really remote village and trying to learn about their cultural aspects and all these things. So rationality itself is a very vague thing. But at least we can just say that if you can express your ideas, your wishes, your ability to even follow them, just to achieve what you want to achieve in life. So in a nutshell, we can just for now assume that that is rational. All right. So which is the first thing of liberalism. All right. Individual liberty is very important, and most of the developed countries, if I'm allowed to say that, they boast on these things. So individual liberty, individual freedom, freedom of speech, and all these things should be a part of so-called liberalism. Liberals also, they think that this human race, it is kind of, on an uphill in terms of unending progress. So, for example, we went to the moon, we discovered computers. 70 years back, 100 years back, we didn't have all these things. We even climbed Mount Everest. So we just keep on growing, improving our lives, others' lives, and we improve the so-called, humanity, whatever you want to, call it. Right? So it's growing. Okay. Liberals also, they don't believe in this classification of countries. So according to them, perhaps it's a very, I would say, rosy concept, but according to them, maybe Asia is just a country. So there is no difference between Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore. So these national borders for them are just artificial borders. We just create them to meet some specific purpose. So liberals, they believe in more like a global world. One language, one world. This is just one way to look at liberalism. If you ask me, sir, I read about liberalism and then it says something else, my answer would be, you're absolutely right. I'm not claiming that this is the definition of liberalism. This is just one way to have some idea of what is liberalism. Now some great guys, we don't have much time, but I'll just touch upon Thomas Hobbes. How many of you heard of Hobbes? The great English, philosopher. He influenced the idea of liberalism, and then he saw this English Civil War, and he thought that the ideal, way to think of liberalism is to let, people do whatever they want to do, which may not be the right thing, but according to him, that's the only way to, reach your own salvation, and then that's the way to, kind of express the utmost idea of liberalism. So that's his opinion. And he also said this, which many people don't like. There is a trade-off between freedom and security. You cannot have them both. So if you want a secure life, secure country, secure nation, then you have to some extent, compromise with your freedom. And that's why Hobbes is known for this kind. So he was one of the first who expressed this kind of opinion that there is a trade-off between security and freedom.
Hobbes wrote Leviathan.
Sorry?
Hobbes wrote Leviathan, right?
Yeah.
He argued for like the strong government to make sure that
He did, and that strong government comes from the security, right? So where you really cannot have, let's say, 100% freedom. So you're absolutely right.
How is he a philosopher who influenced liberalism then?
Because liberalism has different threads,
Okay.
right? So that's why it's like a Pandora's box. So once I go through the other philosophers, you will see it is so confusing because they all are known as liberalists, hardcore liberalists, but they have so different opinion about government, about people, about how we should behave, about how countries should maximize their GDP, let's say, and all these things. Political beliefs are so different, but they all are classified as hardcore liberalists, different ways. So, very good. If you have any question, please stop. The next one is John Locke. He's also, he's also a hardcore believer of this individual freedom. He believes that people are intelligent and they can maximize their welfare, if you want to call it utility, whatever it is. From economic point of view, we think of it as utility maximization. Right. So he also, kind of talked about that government action. He was actually not a big fan of government action, by the way, unlike Hobbes. So John Locke, he was more into that we should question each and every action taken by the government. Because we are, at the end of the day, responsible for our own, let's say, welfare consequences. So government should be held accountable for each and every action which is taken. That was his opinion. And then last but not the least, Rousseau, the famous French philosopher again. And he was, again, on the other side of the spectrum. Because he, as you can see here, just have a quick read. He believed in common good, and he really didn't believe in property rights and all those things, which again, we boast about, economics. So according to him, the moment you have property rights, the moment you have all these secure things, right? Let's say, this cup of coffee is for me, and I have property right on this. The moment you say that, it creates some kind of jealousy, some kind of, differences in the society. So he was a firm believer of common good. Everything is kind of public. So anybody can come and claim that, all right, this cup of coffee is mine as well. I mean, to have an example, right? These kind of ideologies, you have to understand that, first of all, look at the years they lived, right? In those ages, we didn't have Google, right? Of course, they didn't Google just to learn what others think about liberalism, right? So their ideas were heavily influenced by the atmosphere, the kind of the culture they grew up with, or the countries they lived in. French Revolution, English Civil War. So all these, right, all these big events influenced their thought process. So when they wrote about how people should behave, right, how we should think about liberalism, all these ideas were influenced by the circumstances they lived in. So we have to some extent, discount these great philosophers' comments as well. They didn't have Facebook, right? I mean, imagine they had Facebook and they exchange ideas. I'm almost certain, right, they're going to have a very different opinion about this kind of things. Because social interaction obviously were not there. All right, let's move on. Now, I'm going to give you some examples. Political liberalism versus economic liberalism. Some of you tried to say, and I didn't let you, that maybe you wanted to say that, okay, I'm politically liberal but not economically. Okay, I'm economically liberal but not politically or socially. These are different ideas. And I'll show you some graphs. You'll be amazed to see some of the leaders, world leaders, how we kind of designate where they stand in terms of political and economic sphere. Okay, So the economic liberal perspective, there are a few things. The first is growth. Economists, they love this term, economic growth. And most of our Nobel laureates, most of our, let's say, research, heavily influenced by economic growth. We do believe in economic growth, and that kind of, to some extent, is the sole purpose of running a country, because we want to maximize GDP. That is a part of economic liberalism. We also want this demography and technological innovation. So we believe that technological advancement and also demographic shift. China is a good example. China followed this, I don't know, most of you perhaps know, one-child policy. And that put a brake on their demographic balance. Now they realize that it's taking a toll on their fiscal ability. Because now, the demographic composition of China is very adverse. They have only 30–40% young population, the rest above 60–70. So all these are pensioners, and they are drawing money from their savings, right? So now they are trying to release. I think they already did it. That no more one-child policy. Let's have 2 or 3. It's such, I mean, if you can implement such policies, then you can literally control, this per capita GDP, the growth, and all these things. Right? So demography is very important. If you can, of course. I mean, in a democratic setup, perhaps it's not easy to say somebody that, you know what, you're going to have only 1 child. That's it. If you have 2, then it will be for now or something. Right? You need some kind of, strong rules for that. Accumulation of capital, which is again the thing for us, which comes with growth. The growth gives you this accumulation of capital. All these industrialist countries, right? French Revolution and all these things basically allowed these European countries, Western European countries, to become industrialized. That only, that is possible through accumulation of capital. And finally, mass consumer society. We believe it. We are at heart. We are always Keynesian, and we believe in that. So if you have a huge, consumer mass, then there is always demand for goods. You cannot just export your things and do well. You need a consumer base who buys products which you make or you import from others. Right? There should be a constant increasing demand for consumer goods. And that's a very Keynesian concept, because the increase in demand creates even more hunger for goods, production, and all these things, and that creates bills and economy as well. Okay, so this is the economic side. How about the political, side? So the political side is very simple. We have this authoritarian and we have this liberty. So we have this, people like who are very strict. For example, there are many examples. I prefer to take one. Maybe, let's say Hitler. But was Hitler, in terms of political authoritarian, concept? Of course, he was very strict. But how about his economic policy? Was he very liberal in terms of economic policy, or was he very conservative? So let us find that out. What do you think? What is the? So what I'm going to do then? So we have this, 4 quadrants. So here the economic scale goes from left to right. So if you are extremely liberal, then you stand somewhere here. But on the vertical axis, you have political liberalism. So if you are again, it's the other way around. So if you are very liberal, you stand here. If you are very authoritarian, then you go up there. So you have this 4 quadrants. And now let us see how some of the world leaders, where they stand based on this. Right? And there could be some subjective element to this ranking, because of course I didn't do it. I got it from someone else's study, but you can correct it if you think that it's not right. Okay. So these are some of the recent historical figures. Look at Hitler. Of course he was authoritarian. So in terms of political liberalism, he was no way close to where Gandhi or Friedman is. But in terms of economic liberalism, he was not that conservative. So he tried to boost some policies in Germany then, economic policies which are kind of, I would say, between extreme liberalism and also this conservatism. So how was Stalin? Stalin was a dictator as well. no political freedom. But Stalin was also against economic liberal policies, the socialist legacy. So you see, when we classify them under certain categories, they are actually very different. Look at Gandhi, right? From India. He was, of course, he was not an authoritarian figure, but in terms of economic policies, he was not very liberal. So you see, it's a multi-dimensional thing, and that no wonder you had a perhaps difficult time to, even talk about yourself, that where you stand in that multi-time scale, because there's so many elements. If I just ask you, that are you liberal on social scale, you may say yes or no, but overall, where you stand, it's very difficult to pick the number. Right? Okay, how about Friedman? Friedman is a famous macroeconomics Nobel laureate, and he was, in terms of economic liberalism, no wonder he stands here, but in terms of liberalism also, he is more for a freer world. All right? Now, let me show you another interesting, now some contemporaries. And now maybe I'll ask you, what do you think of some of the leaders from Malaysia? Where you put them, right? Okay. Let's start with George Bush. Okay. This guy kind of is an outlier here. So he had this authoritarian, we all know, right, during war and all those things. But he was a Republican. Right? And he, I think, is one of those Republicans who are really to the right, because some of the Republican policies are actually not very liberal. Usually they are around here. Look at Angela Merkel, Chancellor, Germany, here. I don't have many names here. Can you speak? Any of them? Nelson Mandela is here, Dalai Lama is here.
Our Prime Minister?
Yeah, where do you want to put? Where do you want to put him?
Same as David Cameron.
He's definitely a fascist.
Alright. So above this line.
Yeah.
Okay. Now to the left or right?
The right.
To the left.
Right up.
Yes.
The right.
Just like Hitler. He has a lot of
But Hitler is not left. Hitler is right. That means Hitler promoted liberal economic policy. So you see, there is a big difference between Hitler and Stalin, although we always often compare them, right? I can give you another example. He is not here, and I always talk about him in my development class. Muhammad Gaddafi. What do you think of Gaddafi?
Fascist left.
Fascist?
Fascist left.
He did a few economic policies most of you don't know. For example, during his rule, he maintained the same gas price for over a period of 30 years, which is unbelievable. So sometimes, we judge people based on their, of course, what we hear from others, newspapers and all. But we really don't get the complete picture. So Muhammad Gaddafi, he actually had a big fan following actually in Libya. Of course, he was a crazy leader. There's no doubt about it. But same as the Egyptian Mubarak, Hosni Mubarak. So they actually did certain things for their country, people, which are unprecedented. No developed country can ever think of achieving those things. Can you imagine keeping the same gas price for a period of 20, 25 years, 50 years? As an economist, I cannot believe that it is possible. Of course, maybe some other resources went into that, but that actually, to some extent, helped the poor. If you have more or less a stagnant gas price for a long period of time. Even in some of the Middle East countries, you have soaring gas prices. So some policies, sometimes. So it's really hard, to classify people based on these, traits, right? Different opinions. Okay, how about Mahathir?
Left up.
Huh? Left?
Yeah.
No, right.
He's more socialist.
Actually, it's very social.
Yeah, very socialist, but
And
really
it's
authoritarian.
Oh, okay, so even you have, right, you don't have a difference in terms of opinions. Right? And how many of you are here? Like, less than 30? So imagine when we do voting and all these things, right, in a social area, how many different opinions could rise? So it's really extremely difficult, to have a clear-cut answer. Even these positions also are, I can say whatever I know of Angela Merkel. Perhaps she should not be here. That's my opinion. But whoever kind of did this research, according to him or her, she should be here. Because Angela Merkel is not very liberal in terms of economic policy. And Germans, they are happy about that. Because now they are actually moving back from, you know all these things, right? At least some of you I believe know. Because they think that they are basically carrying the burden of European Union. And some of these countries like, like Greece, Spain, right, and the new entrants, they are kind of free riding. So now they are actually trying to go back to the so-called not so liberal policies. Angela is kind of leading that. Anyway, so just to give an idea, so this is what, perhaps it's going to change your mind and then ask you again, say that you don't really have that score anymore. Okay. Now economic development. So what is economic development? So I just put two definitions, and I'm going to talk about one more. So what do you think? If I ask you, anybody? I teach development, and still I don't have a clear definition in mind. That's the problem. More you read, more you get confused. What is development?
Welfare.
Okay.
Welfare?
Welfare. Anything else? Okay. Absolute poverty, not relative. Zero. Okay. How about inequality? Do you think that's development? There is a country called Mali, and in Mali, 95% people are poor. So it's a highly equal society because no one has food. So if equality is good, then Mali definitely does well. No one has food. Everybody is hungry and.
So you're saying that somehow the Gini coefficient is both reliable and unreliable?
No, what I'm saying that equality is good, but equality at which level? Equality at very below poverty level certainly is not good. Right? So we have to have a sensible mix of these things. You cannot just take Gini and say, all right, I'm going to swear by Gini coefficient. And wherever I see Gini, more than 44, I just start voting. No. Sometimes inequality is good because it creates opportunities. It makes people, it drives people for, success and other things, catching up. Any other definitions you have in mind for development?
Development is moving from point A to point B where the condition is better, and there's many ways you can measure development. Like lecturer say, it's about also not only in terms of economy, but also like about measuring well-being.
Right. Other things, the so-called, which I'm sure, other social scientists who are not economists, they like those things very much because economists always talk about economics. So, and as an economist, being an economist, I wholeheartedly accept their opinion. I have no problem, saying that there are other, parameters to judge, measure development. Okay. How about environment? How about, biodiversity? Sustainability, which is basically the next definition. So development can also be thought as sustainable. And World Bank, IMF, they are putting a lot of money and they have been doing it over the last, I would say, 20, 30 years. And it's only growing. So before coming here, I worked in many places and then I still work for the bank. So I was in Washington DC office for almost 5 years. That's when they started something called global awareness for environment. And now it has grown so